Welcome to Think Tech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Jay Fidel.
And I'm your co-host, Duko Ishii.
In our show this week, we'll cover the recent seminar at the Foreign Trade Zone on issues around doing business in China.
China expert Mark Lewis of the U.S. Commercial Service was the principal speaker, and there was a lot to learn.
Mark Lewis has had multiple tours in China and is familiar with the challenges of doing business there. He's very knowledgeable and articulate, as you'll see from his remarks.
I don't know if you watched the movie Lincoln, but just as Lincoln had that cabinet of people who didn't always get along and agree with each other, I think that's the case in China right now with the new leadership. So you've got some conservatives and you've got some people who are more forward-leaning. In this case, Mr. Zhang is a North Korea educated economist, and he's an advocate of the state-owned enterprises. So when we talk about economic reform in China, some people are more focused on growing the private sector, and Zhang Dejiang is more focused on the state-owned enterprises. He thinks that a strong base of state-owned enterprises in China is a good thing. So again, we've got that sort of those two schools of thought going on in the new leadership in China. Transformation, I think, is the key word here for Yu Zhengsheng. He's the third-ranking vice premier. I don't know if you can see that well. Coalition with non-communist parties. So he's looking to basically reach across the aisle, if you would, in Chinese terms, and working with other entities, private sector advocate, again, in opposition with Mr. Zhang, right? He's an advocate of the private sector. He thinks that you should grow more of the private sector instead of trying to rely more on the state-owned enterprises in China. Truth from the people, okay? Liu Yushan, he is what we call a mainstream, his roots are very red, they would say in Chinese. So he's basically, his resume includes being China's top censor, Central Party school president. So the Communist Party has its own school, and where they basically indoctrinate the future leaders of the party. He used to be the president of that school. So again, he's the very hard-line, conservative, very red-rooted communist leader, working with those reformists that we saw. And here we have Wang Qishan, who used to be our counterpart during the economic dialogue that we had with China. Now his job is the disciplinarian. He's in charge of basically rooting out corruption. So some people say that it's a waste of talent, but others say that, well, if you're going to root out corruption, then you start with a guy who understands, how the purse strings are being pulled. So who knows? Maybe he'll do a great job. There are a lot of skeptics out there, though. Do more, speak less. You get these people who are very old school, aligned with Jiang Zemin. Past policies do not support rebalancing the economy. He's, again, looking forward. He's not looking at, relying on what worked in the past for China. He's looking at some new solutions for rebalancing the economy. So basically, we're looking at economic policy. These are the hot button issues. Infrastructure investment, liberalization, domestic consumption. Again, if you're looking at selling from the United States to China, domestic consumption is a hot button issue for the Chinese right now. They want to, increase domestic consumption, rely a little less on export-driven economic development, lowering barriers and making it easier to repatriate your profits. So for us, 7%, wow, excellent. For the Chinese, they're not so excited about 7%. But that's where it is right now. That's the prediction through 2015, through the 12th five-year plan. Trends, U.S. imports from China, up. U.S. exports to China, up. Everything's up. U.S. worldwide exports, up. So the trend is all positive, particularly when it comes to China. Has an overall deficit, but a big trade surplus with the U.S. Now here's a trend of income disparity, and this slide, if you show it to any of those leaders that we looked at earlier, they would cringe, because this is not just an economic problem for them, it's a social problem, it's a political problem. How do you address this widening disparity between, of the incomes of people living in the big cities, that red line, and incomes of people not living in the big cities, that gray line, and the space between them is getting bigger and bigger. So we talk about middle class in China. Middle class has at least two different definitions. What do you mean by middle class? Where? And under what circumstances? So a big social problem in China. Growth of disposable income, meanwhile, on the rise. So people have, basically, bottom line, if you're selling consumer goods and you're exporting consumer goods to China, disposable income is on the rise. Yes, there is a growing market for consumer goods. Rebalancing the economy, trends, fixed asset investment, third largest consumption as of 2012. So we're going from fixed asset investment to domestic consumption. Again, China trying to increase domestic consumption to grow that part of the economy. Going from consumption to 35% of GDP as of a couple of years ago to the goal being 50% of GDP in 2015. Again, 2015, the end of this current 5-year plan. The Chinese have a 5-year plan every 5 years. So that's the goal to be, that's the target for this 5-year plan currently. Trends, again, luxury goods. Yeah, China's got a large market for luxury goods. The Chinese love to buy luxury goods. However, people who can afford it get on a plane, go to LA, they come to Hawaii maybe, they go to wherever, go to an outlet, spend thousands of dollars on Gucci and Prada, and how many handbags do you need? I don't know. And they'll get back on the plane, they go right back to China. And it's worth it. They actually save money by doing that. So I'm over here, actually, I cover part of my portfolio is travel and tourism. And we've got about 1,000 Chinese people in Hawaii celebrating Chinese New Year. Chinese parents are focused on that U.S. News and World Report ranking. And if the school's not on that list, it just doesn't exist. They won't consider it. So what we're trying to do is help the schools focus on what they can do better than anybody else. Let's say you have the best nursing program in the state or the best aviation training program in the country. Well, say that, advertise that, promote that, because Chinese are very focused on that on a ranking. If it's not in the top whatever, they're not interested. Telecommunications, 5 cloud computing cities. China Mobile, again, this is an amazing statistic. It's 683 million people on China Mobile. I'm a user of China Mobile as well. Unicom and Telecom. So you get these, everybody's on the cell phone doing the way, in China, Twitter is technically blocked by the Chinese authorities. But we have what's called Weibo, which is basically Twitter. It's Chinese Twitter. Facebook is blocked, but you have other means of communicating. People do Weixin and Weibo. Wei means micro. So anything with a Wei in front of it is a micro something, micro something, micro something. So people are on their cell phones all the time doing everything. My wife is always talking at her cell phone. Not on her, at the cell phone. I said, why don't you talk to the person? No, it's better this way. It's a Weixin. So you leave a message, a voice message, and the person hears it immediately, instantly, like a walkie-talkie sort of. And then they answer back. But it's not a voicemail. It's just they're talking back and forth. Why don't you just call the person? No, it's okay. They're having fun. It's cheaper too. Yeah. But they're having so much fun doing it. It's amazing. Agriculture. This is the most, I would say, the most positive of the sectors that we have. The strongest sector that we have in terms of exports to China. Soybeans, pecans, U.S. 5-year accord with China, basically promoting agricultural goods to China. We have a U.S. trade surplus in agricultural goods to China. A Chinese breakfast basically is a U.S. breakfast. Eating the soybean milk and have the flour that goes into making the danbing, the egg omelet. A lot of that's American. U.S. agricultural products going to China. Chinese outbound FDI, getting the Chinese to invest in the United States. Last year we had $6.5 billion of investment from China to the United States. Investing in energy and technology and aviation, automobile manufacturing, et cetera. There'll be more and more investment from China into the United States as Chinese have more money to invest outside of China.
After Mark's presentation, the U.S. Commercial Service presented a panel on the subject, including speakers Jeff Lau, a local attorney who does business in China, Mike Sikarsky of Pacific Enterprise Capital, a local businessman who does business in China, and Bi-Ling Chua of HiBeam, who works to connect Hawaii entrepreneurs with Chinese partners.
Taking a visit, finding a partner to work with, and as he said, have it over a certain set duration of time, because if it's open-ended, all kinds of things tend to happen. So finding a Chinese partner, and it does take patience. That means a number of visits, establishing relationships. Certainly the commercial service office can help. Certainly in the key cities that there are U.S. embassies or consulates, they can be really helpful and get you connected with potential Chinese partners to work with. That is the key. The other factor is having the wherewithal to be able to sustain a long-term investment in China. That's developing a whole team, as Mark mentioned, having some Chinese speakers, having your bankers squared away. And in this town, really, there's only one bank that's capable of doing a substantial number of transactions, and that is, I think there's only really one bank that has an international banking department. So seeking consultation with them, they have a whole Chinese team set and ready to go, including a number of Chinese native speakers actually coming from China.
I think there's good news and bad news. The good news is that China is an enormous market for American goods right now. If there were no trade barriers, I think China could suck up all the product that we could export to them. And there are three reasons for that. Number one, American products by and large are safe, and Chinese put high premium now on safety. Secondly, our products are reliable. In other words, when you put toast in today and you get out a nice piece of toast out of your toaster, you put that same piece of, or the next day you put in another piece of bread, you're going to get the same toast day after day. And so there's a reliability factor that accompanies American goods that is highly regarded in China. And third is durability, in that you don't have to buy a new toaster every 2 years. You can buy a toaster that will last you 10 years, 12, 15 years. So the attraction for American goods is enormous. So that's the good news.
For the past 2 years, I've brought a total of 18 companies to Hong Kong, and biotech companies to Singapore, and then recently last year it was to Hong Kong, back again Hong Kong and Beijing. And one of the good things about these programs is that companies will meet a lot of people, and we work closely with the U.S. Commercial Service. In fact, everyone in the delegation has an opportunity to do a gold key, and that is tremendous. That's a tremendous opportunity. But I think it's companies will have to have an appetite for follow-up, because very soon after you come back from an amazing experience where you'll meet a lot of people, a lot of potential investors, and we do make a special effort to link people who are looking for investment dollars with potential investors. When you come back, companies really just become absorbed into operating their own companies, that they forget or they kind of let things slide and they don't follow up, they don't follow through.
Afterward, we spoke to ThinkTech's David Day, host of Asia in Review on the ThinkTech radio series. He was at the seminar, and we wanted to get his views about the significance of the program and the subjects discussed.
This program was very significant for Hawaii's business community because there were two aspects to it. One was a forward crystal ball look into the China market for the next year, and that was provided in the briefing done by Mark Lewis. And in his briefing, he talked about the new political leadership in China and the significance of the reformist bent which that leadership has. He talked about opportunities in education, renewable energy, and tourism, and some other sectors, agriculture, for Hawaii's business community. Mark also talked about some of the obstacles for doing business for Hawaii's business community in China, and some tips that he was providing with his years of insight. The purpose of the U.S. commercial sector is to act as a marriage broker between U.S. business and Chinese business, and to help American business get into that market. If you have an interest in doing business in China or any other country in the region, what you do is contact the U.S. Commercial Service here at the Foreign Trade Zone, and they hook you up with colleagues in the various countries who are experts, like this gentleman, Mark Lewis. Well, in the past, the China programs that we have seen here in Hawaii have tended to be rah-rah, China can do no wrong, all you got to do is get started and boom, your business will explode. And that has not been the history of American business in China. And there have been a lot of problems and challenges. And what was valuable about this particular program was that the participants had tremendous practical expertise. What I appreciated most was the really detailed perspective that Mark Lewis provided on each member of the new Politburo coming in Beijing, and what they were bringing to the table and how that mix worked in terms of potential reform for China. Because China has some very serious problems it has to deal with, and without some kind of reform, the question is not going to be whether China has a hard landing or a soft landing. The question is going to be whether or not China can land at all, meaning whether or not there will be some very serious upheaval within the country, which would be disastrous for the world economy.
Yes, it was a very significant and valuable program, not only because of the expertise of the speakers and the level of the discussion, but because, like it or not, China is and will be increasingly important to Hawaii and to Hawaii's economy.
Good for the U.S. Commercial Service for presenting programs of this nature. We hope they continue and expand the series for the benefit of the Hawaii business community.
China dominates the Pacific and has become a huge economic force in the world. Hawaii should be looking for ways to create long-term business relationships with China. Programs of this nature are invaluable to help us do that. We look forward to more.
Want to know more about the U.S. Commercial Service? Check out trade.gov/cs. Want to know more about the Foreign Trade Zone? Check out ftz9.org. There's a lot more to learn about trade with China, and now's the time to learn it. And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. Drive Time radio series on KGU 760 AM continues this week. Tune in to 7:60 a.m. for Energy on Wednesday, Asia in Review on Thursday, and Think Tech Fridays on Friday. Raise your awareness on Think Tech Radio.
On March 28th, the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and ThinkTech will present a luncheon panel program entitled Fiscal Policy in the 2013 Legislature. How can we pay for the programs and initiatives we want? This program will feature Calbert Young, State Budget and Finance Director, Senator David Ige, Chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Senator Josh Green, Chair of the Senate Health Committee, Richard Lim, Director of the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, and Tom Apple, UH Chancellor, along with others otherwise involved in the process. Bob Toyofuku of Hawaii Advocates will moderate. Sign up for this important and timely program on hvca.org.
And now, here's Bill Spencer, President of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
ThinkTech and the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, we put these programs together at the Plaza Club, every fourth Thursday of every month. And there's one coming up now that's really interesting. And this is a legislative update, but it's more than a legislative update because it goes to a core point of policy that we have got and they have got to be thinking about. And this is fiscal management, fiscal policy about how you select the programs you're going to do when you don't have enough money.
Priorities.
Priorities. And so it's like everybody has got to decide whether really to push a program for which there is no money. Not only the Ways and Means Committee in the Senate and the Finance Committee in the House, but all of them, all of the legislature, and in fact, all the advocates. They have got to be reasonable and responsible on how to push for money when there isn't enough money. Years ago, there was more money, seems like to me. And then we had grants and aid. Remember, everybody was with his hand out with the grants and
Right.
aid. That stopped because we didn't have enough money. We also don't have money for some of the social programs we need, some of the business programs we need, some of the infrastructure programs we need. And right now, we may be better off in terms of the economy than we were a couple of years ago, but we're still struggling to find the money to pay for the programs we absolutely need.
Right.
And the legislature got to sort this out. And I think this is the most important policy issue, in the session, in any session. So we're having this discussion among a number of people who can shed some light on it. Our opening speaker is Calbert Young. He's the State Director of Budget and Finance. He's brilliant. He's a fantastic thinker and speaker. He's been of great help to the administration, the Abercrombie administration. We have Tom Apple, the Chancellor of UH Manoa. We've had him before. And he can speak about, how important is the university? Because there's issues now in the legislature about the university budget and so forth. A lot of it. Procurement practices. I'm sure he'll be pitching for more money for the university, but that's an issue in the legislature. David Ige is the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee,
Right.
which does, the finance for the Senate. A very important position, a very powerful position. And all this ultimately falls on his desk to sort out the priorities.
And he's a real good
He is.
advocate for economic development and diversification. He gets it.
Yes, he does, and he's a reasonable man. He's got great understanding about how the state works. Richard Lim, the director of DBED, that is Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, the guy who is presumably responsible for business development in the
right.
state of Hawaii, as well as energy. And I'm sure that he's going to have a few things to say about exactly how much of the state budget ought to go to incentivize business. And he's got a bill pending right now. You're familiar with that bill?
That's right,
$20
the
million.
high growth initiative,
Yeah.
which is designed to provide a little venture capital pump priming to match private sector venture capital and keep our tech sector rolling along.
Yeah. Now there are those who, think that we shouldn't do that we shouldn't incentivize any industry. And so Richard has got to advocate for that. We'll have to see what he has to say. Josh Green is senator. He's from the Big Island. He's the chair of the Senate Health Committee. He's a doctor. And he's going to be talking, of course, about how much money should we put into health. I mean, the state hospital system is in bad shape. And there are all kinds of other health funding issues going on in the state. And there'll be others, covering energy, education, health, business development, infrastructure, and so forth. All of these competing interests. And we want to help understand and sort this out on who should get what. It's really important. We can't abandon important social programs, and at the same time, we have to do business development to prime the pump. You know, it's hard. I wouldn't want to be a legislator, actually.
Very tough job. Of course, we're seeing the same thing at the national level.
But what's different, if I may, is that at the federal level, there is no requirement, constitutional requirement to balance the budget.
That's right.
And in Hawaii, there is, so we're always up against the wall on this every single year. So I hope this is of some help to the legislature.
But hopefully some members of the ledge will come on down. So please join us March 28th, Plaza Club, 11:30, and you can register in advance at hvca.org.
Just to let you know, we are planning to include 2 additional features in our Think Tech on OC16 shows. One is called Startup Station. This will give you a chance to meet members of the startup community. The other is called Traffic Report, where Panos Preveduros, traffic engineer at the College of Engineering at UH Manoa, will examine Honolulu's record-breaking traffic congestion, one jam at a time.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of Think Tech. But first, we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates MECO on Maui and Helco on the Big Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle & Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future. Okay, Duke, that wraps up this week's edition of Think Tech. Remember, you can watch Think Tech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Duke does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
For sure, Jay. For lots more Think Tech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on Think Tech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or a volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Jay Fidel. Thanks so much for joining us on Think Tech. You can watch the show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode.
And I'm Duke Oishi. Aloha, everyone.
My name is DJ, and Think Tech rocks.